Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Seth Hiatt, founder of Mayday Games and Imperial Publishing, best known for their brand of Sleeve Kings and their first game, Red Outpost. Seth has completed over 40 successful Kickstarter projects and launched his newest game, Poetry Slam, on the platform this week. Seth, welcome to the Binge. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am doing great. I was just saying before we went on air here, I'll be shocked if we can get through everything I want to ask you in 30 minutes. You have so much experience in this industry. I'm very thankful to have you on the podcast, and we'll see how much we can get through.
Sure.
So 10 years in the industry, where did it begin? Did it begin with the sleeves? Did it begin with the board games? Where did you kind of start?
So I started Mayday Games in 2011 as a corporation, and really in 2008, I started just selling some products. So my very first product was a Settlers of Catan board, like a board that you put the game Catan. You know, back then it was just the tiles, and you didn't have the border and stuff.
Yeah.
And so we were selling this board that I made in China, this cardboard board, and then about that same time, Dominion came out, and this guy named Craig Borden, I still remember his name, he emailed me and said, "Hey, you guys are Mayday Games." So the idea of Mayday was if someone has a product they want to have made, you send us a Mayday and we create it. So we started doing Animeeple tokens for Agricola back in the day, because we were there only with squares for the token, the sheeples and cows and everything, and Agricola. Well, this guy Craig Borden emailed us and said, "Hey, you should make these weird sized sleeves for this game called Dominion that just came out." And I'm like, "Oh, I have Dominion. I played it. 500 cards, great, but it shuffles like mad, and you're going to ruin your cards." Yeah. But no one had made that size 59 by 92 millimeter sleeve before. It didn't exist anywhere. So I'm like, okay, we'll call that Euro sized. And then we made that packaging and made that size, and that was our first product. And then we made a thicker version, and then little by little we started finding all these other strange and wonderful size sleeves that Mayday started rolling out with, and now we've got like 40 sizes and 2 different thicknesses, and just kind of went from there. But we still do some accessories and tokens and things, and we since have done a bunch of games. We've probably done 30 games in the last 10 years. So just kind of started into it from there. But 2011 was our first Kickstarter.
And so it started off then on the kind of accessory side, not on the board game side.
Yeah, just accessories and sleeves is all it was. Yeah, so, my first Gen Con in 2008 was just accessories and some sleeves. And
have you been in the board game industry for like many years before? Like what were you doing before you got into it?
So I actually graduated with an MBA and an accounting degree. I have a CPA, and in 2001 I left my accounting industry job and started selling on eBay. 2001 to 2008, I sold full-time on eBay selling other people's products. So I was a licensed distributor for Ruby's costumes and for like Star Wars Master Replicas stuff. And of course, there were board games in there. There's just any geek item I was interested in, right?
Yeah.
And I had a small little board game shop too. But I hated people coming to my shop and I didn't have anything to supersize them with. You know, like, you want fries with that? Well, you can't do that in the industry. So I was always looking for accessories I could buy that had more margin to increase my revenue. And that's kind of how it all started. But in 2008, I switched from selling other people's products on eBay to selling my own products, which has ended up being a really good thing.
Now, have you played board games your whole life? Like, has board games always been a passion though before you kind of started getting to the accessories, or is it just a happy coincidence?
I grew up playing, the usuals, Risk, Monopoly, all that garbage, Stratego, chess. I love that stuff. But then I remember I went to a camp out with my sons, and I want to say it was 2001 or 1999, and I started playing. I played Settlers of Catan for the first time, and I really liked it. And I started playing Catan and Ticket to Ride, and got into Power Grid and Memoir 44, and a whole bunch of those old school classic Euro games, right?
Yeah.
And then Dominion came out, and just a lot of those. So I kind of was always in the industry because I like games, but then I got into it more for the business of it. I just decided to create this crazy thing. So.
And then, so the sleeves that you were doing at Mayday, now that was different than Sleeve Kings, was it? Sleeve Kings was different?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So Mayday started in 2011. And then in 2018, my then wife and I of 24 years, unfortunately, got divorced. Yeah. And she was 49% owner of Mayday. And there was some dispute there on how that was going to work. And I was paying alimony, child supports, and business payments. But I'm like, I want to keep doing this, but I don't want to give all of my labor to her, half of it for the rest of my life. So any new products I have coming out, starting in late 2018, I started putting in this new company I started by myself called Imperial Publishing. And that's where Sleeve Kings came in. So that started in 2018, at the end of 2018.
Now, is there a difference between the sleeves? Like I noticed, I saw a video online where you're trying to like rip a sleeve apart. You can't,
Yeah.
you can't break
So
the sleeve. So what was
yeah.
the story
So
there?
so Mayday Games has their standard sleeves are 40 microns thick. That's the thickness, and then their
Mhm.
premium sleeves are 90 microns thick. So Sleeve Kings are 60 microns thick. So they're 50% thicker than Mayday standard, but they're 33% thinner than Mayday premium. So they're kind of right in the middle, and they're about the same price point as the Mayday standard. So they're thicker, they feel more premium, but they're also 110 per pack instead of 100, and about the same price point. So it's just a different kind of line. And I just wanted to make sure that it was a totally new company, new factory, new everything, built the whole thing from scratch with new logistics partners and distribution, all that. So totally different. And then we just recently last week we finished our sleeve campaign on Kickstarter for our premium sleeves, which instead of the 90 micron stick for Mayday, these are 100 micron stick.
Wow.
And they're 55 per pack instead of 50. So that's our premium line for Sleeve Kings. Now we have 4 different thicknesses of sleeves and like all these different sizes. So it's getting confusing. Yeah. But everyone likes them for different reasons. There seems to be a market for both.
So, back when you first started doing sleeves, I'm sure you weren't the only person doing sleeves for cards, right? Or were
No,
you?
yeah,
No,
no,
yeah.
we weren't.
So,
Well, Ultra Pro and I remember FFG had announced they were going to do some, but they hadn't done them yet. But Ultra Pro was the big player in the industry. They were already in Walmart and selling them. If you go to the Magic the Gathering or the baseball card sleeves, you'll see them there. But I remember my very first Gen Con in 2008, I remember the Ultra Pro guys coming over and going, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just selling these little sleeves." They're like, "Do you do much volume in that?" I'm like, "Stay away, please." I'm like, "Nope." And they're like, "Well, are you planning on doing the same size we do, the 63.5 by 88, the ones that everybody does, the penny sleeves or whatever?" I'm like, "How about this? How about you stay out of my market with these weird sizes, and I'll stay out of your market with those sizes. We won't even compete." And we shook hands on it, and he said, "Deal." And then that lasted about 6 months before they started making sleeves the same size we were. So then I started making the same size they are. So it's fine. I mean, you can't copyright a dimension of a plastic piece of plastic, right? So what are you going to do?
and
But
did you try to like, I guess in a case like that, when you're coming in and someone else is already, you're coming in as a third guy in or fourth guy in, how did you carve out your piece? Like, how did you
yeah.
differentiate yourself, or how did you kind of stand out
So
amongst that crowd?
so it mostly started with us doing all these different sizes. Like now it's the sizes we invented. I remember me and my wife at the time on the kitchen table saying, "Okay, this little sleeve, what are we going to call that? We'll call that Mini USA. Okay, we'll call this one Mini Euro." And then I remember we got our first batch of sleeves in, which were the 57 by 89, which are the standard USA. Well, FFG Fantasy Flight had said that their cards were all that size, 57 by 89, but 56 by 89. Let me see what they are. 56 by 87. Sorry, that's the standard USA. We got a bunch of men and people started complaining. They don't fit Fantasy Flight games. Well, Fantasy Flight has been lying all along on the size of their cards. They're all a millimeter and a half longer and taller. So I either had to refund a bunch of people and cancel it, or I had to come up with a new size. So I made another one that's just slightly bigger, that's a millimeter and a half larger than the USA standard. They're called Chimera. If you Google Chimera, it's just another name for fantasy.
Yeah.
That's what Chimera. So the Chimera size, it's like basically Fantasy Flight is what we're telling people. So that's how that size came into being. And we just started making up new names for them whenever we had another size. Just call them, whatever
Lesson
size we made
learned
it.
on theoreticals. You always want to take that card
You need
and
to
stick it in
measure
the
it.
sleeve.
Yep. A lot of
We,
people give you bad information and you don't know until you try it. So
Yeah, it's crazy. It reminds me of back in my previous life. I used to work with a food manufacturer, and we were making packaging for hot dogs that were, single serve. And all the engineer guys came and said, "Okay, here's the size of the box to hold the hot dogs and the additional packaging." But it was all based on theoretical. No one actually took the hot dogs and folded them over top of each other, which created a bunch of air pockets. And as they're stuffing in these boxes, you had all these boxes tearing, and it's an absolute disaster. So,
oh my gosh, yeah, that's
lesson
bad.
learned: always try to test it in a practical, way.
Measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, exactly. Have you guys been able to tie in with any other like board game companies in advance of them coming with their games to say, "Look, hey guys,
Yeah, we've done a lot of that. In fact, we have a lot of people that go on Kickstarter and they'll reach out to us and say, "Hey, we want to do sleeves." One recent one was with Ryan Lockett with Red Robin, Red what?
Red Rising,
Red no, Ryan Lockett's company. I'm forgetting the name of it. Red something. Sorry, Ryan. Anyway, he had a new game coming out which is called. Anyway, I can't remember one of his most popular games. And I'm just drawing a blank. Anyway, he was like, "Hey, we want to make sleeves for this," and so we partnered with him. We're like, "Hey, we'll just slap our logo on there with yours. We'll help you design the art." And then we actually OEM'd those in our factory, sent them to his factory in China, and sent them out together with his games for fulfillment. We've done that with a lot of games. I mean, a lot. Some of them we actually have agreements we can't tell you, but I've had some, 7 and 8 figure games that we've done the sleeves for.
Yeah.
that they represent as their own sleeves, but they're actually ours, which is fine. I'm happy to take their money. So,
Yeah.
but we put it with all of our products, so we get a really good volume discount on the price, and it's just more margin. Any company that does more than 1,000 copies, it's just free margin for them. So I was just looking at Tiny Epic Dungeons, and they have, if you look on their Kickstarter pledge manager, one of their things on there is our sleeve pack. So, and it's labeled Mayday. It's just a Mayday branded sleeve that's for Tiny Epic.
And I guess for the users too, it's got to be better for them because they're not going to pay the shipping twice, right? They can just include it in their game as it gets fulfilled. They pay the shipping once, sleeve comes, and they can put some love and care around those precious cards.
Yeah, it's a good deal for everybody, and a lot of people want to make sure that one of the most frequent questions on Kickstarter is, will this game fit sleeves back in the box? That's always on the FAQ on almost every Kickstarter now.
I just got hit with that a week and a half ago. Somebody said, okay, have you just, I'm looking at your picture of your box organization, with the standard sleeve on these cards is going to fit.
Yep.
I'm glad they asked the question because, of course, these are just prototypes. So we're going to finalize everything. And what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to get the deck. I'm going to sleeve the deck and we're going to measure it to make sure it actually fits in the pocket.
If you or any other designer or person on Kickstarter who's launching a campaign wants to just hit me up with an email and I'll send you a free pack of sleeves for that size. You can check them. No problem.
Oh, there we go. All right. There's a plug. Well, maybe I get those included with some nice squirrels in the coming weeks.
Yeah, for sure. It's really easy to do.
So let's talk a little bit about your new Kickstarter, Poetry Slam. Now I'm going to share my screen, so don't be startled as the screen changes. So walk us through this game. This is a relaunch. I guess you tried this a couple years ago. It didn't fund. So now you're coming, I guess maybe the environment is more appropriate now for party games and things like that. Walk us through this game. What's Poetry Slam all about?
So the game was designed and made. We actually kind of finished everything in 2018. We're ready to go with it. We launched on Kickstarter, just never did very well. And we had all these stretch goals at, pretty high numbers. We were very optimistic. And we've done, like you said, over 40 projects that are successful. So we kind of knew what we were doing. It's a well laid out campaign. But for some reason, it just didn't hit the right spot with backers. I don't know why, but it didn't do very well. So we canceled it. So we're like, well, we have this idea. We've already paid for the art. We've got the files. Everything's ready to go. What are we going to do with this game? I don't want to just launch it into the world sight unseen and hope that distributors buy it. So what we decided to do was unlock all the stretch goals, throw everything into like we had planned for the Kickstarter, and then just sell it at cost. So the Kickstarter is $5 if you want the deluxe, all the stretch goals unlocked. So you get like foil cards, foil box, a special pencil, double-sided scoring pad, 9 and 10 player. It says 20,000 there. So you get all that stuff with it. The standard game is $3. The premium is $5. You just pay us the shipping and we'll send it to you. So it's really a total experiment to try to seed the market and see if sending out 2,000 copies of this game is going to build demand for us to reprint it and get into distribution or not. So, but the reviews have all been done. Everybody seems to like the game. It's doing pretty well on BGG. People review it pretty well reviewed. And we just have I think we have 1,000 copies of the limited edition, and then like 600 or 700 of the premium or of the standard.
So and the gist of the game is that I guess people are drawing letters, and they have to come up with a poem, I guess, like a 2-sentence poem, like a rhyming 2 sentences that rhyme that contain that letter, and then people have to try to guess what the word is. Is that kind of the essence of the game?
So like, say that you have an M on your board, then you choose a word like moon, and you'd be like, once a month when it is night, this comes out and bears some light. I don't know. I'm terrible with poems. But anyway, it's something like that. And then if someone can guess it, that's pretty good for on the fly. But if someone can guess it, then you get points, and then they get points for guessing it, and whoever guesses first gets points. And you also have these snap cards or snap tokens that you have to give people to like give them props for if they did a good poem, stuff like that. So
that's awesome.
It's a really fun game. It's a good one. It's up to 10 players with the expansion stuff that's in there. So.
I love the whole beatnik theme to it too. Is pretty cool.
Yeah,
and the way you guys designed the page, how it's all all the groovy and all that kind of stuff. It's
definitely the beatnik feel. The video kind of encapsulates that as well. But it's already funded. It's doing well. We only have literally 1,000 copies, so I think it'll actually sell out before we get to the 10 days on it, because it's a 10-day campaign.
Yeah, I could see that. You're already at 338 backers. I mean, right from when we started talking to when I shared my screen, you added another 6 backers. So
I mean, it's coming along. It's going to crawl up there.
You're seeing backers coming pretty quick. It's one of these things with Kickstarter, right? That people always say, well, what kind of games fund, right? It's got to be D&D, or it's got to be an
Gotta
RPG
have some
game with
minis.
minis. You got to have the minis. But man, you'll see games that are party games that'll fund really well. I mean, as I know I said last week, but Doomlings just did insanely well. Your last Kickstarter was Crocono.
Yeah.
Crocono.
Yeah.
And it did over $400,000.
It's been in 1998 or 1898, right? So a little older game from Canada, right?
Yeah, that blew me away that a game like Crocono, where you've created kind of, I guess, like a premium wood edition of it, but it's still Crocono, right? And that funded over $300,000.
Yeah.
I was shocked to see that. And I think what that to me is an indication that it's not necessarily that there's a type of game that is successful on Kickstarter or not. It's really honing in on getting to the right audience for the game, right? So,
yeah, we've done. I think this is our 5th or 6th Kickstarter for Crokinole that we've done over the years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of established for us. But really, what happened this time was Shut Up and Sit Down did a review of Crokinole that's got almost 1 million views on YouTube, and it kind of got a little viral for our industry. It's pretty viral, and so I think that helped us a lot. Just people that are more aware of the game, and him saying, for $250, it's a tough choice, but I'd still buy one. And then we come along with a $99 Kickstarter. It's like, well, that's a no-brainer. So it did much better than we expected. Usually they do 60, 80 grand. And that one, we ended up doing 4 containers of those to the US. It's crazy.
Now, one thing I've seen is that with your different campaigns, and I wasn't able to go through all 55 of them, but I did go through
3 hours to burn, huh?
Say like the last 10. You seem to have arrived at a very much of a template on your Kickstarter campaigns. Is this something that's just kind of worked out that way, or have you guys consciously started templating out, okay, this next Kickstarter, we know these certain things work in this order and we need to have it kind of, it's almost formulaic. Is that something you guys have done conscientiously?
We've definitely done it consciously because I've looked at what other people have done that have been successful, like Tiny Epic Gamelin does amazing. Michael and Nathan have a great team over there and they do really well. But I look at what they do and try to emulate things that other successful people do to the extent I can. But the other thing is Kickstarter isn't just a pre-order page, and it's not just a funding a dream thing, but it's really more of a pitch, and to me, when I look at a pitch, I want to know why I should do this now. It's like, so the very first thing in all of our projects is why back now. There's got to be a carrot there on why you should back this now rather than waiting for retail or taking a chance on a game that's not going to, who knows if it's going to come through. You don't know, I backed the coolest cooler and I lost my $300 and never got the cooler. So people are taking a risk. So we have why back now. Then we have kind of the how to play. Then we have an explanation of what's in each pledge level. And then we have the reviews and you have, the risks, and it's just, shipping, all that, but it's in a kind of a certain order. And we try to just do that every time, but it seems to be the quickest way to, people are going to make that decision generally pretty fast. And sometimes they only just look at the top of the page and go, okay, I'm backing it, or they watch the video.
So for a company like you that obviously has a very large portfolio, right? And most of these games I think are designed to not just be on Kickstarter, but then be on your page and through distributors and so forth, afterwards.
In the stores.
Yeah. So some, I see some people when they do a campaign, they'll say, one reason to back us is because it's exclusive to Kickstarter. You can only get this on Kickstarter. That's why you need to back. But you guys can't say that. So what is the main hook for most of your games as to why people should back now versus just wait for this to come out on your page?
It really depends on the game. Like with Crokinole, it came down to price point. The Crokinole retails for $175, but if you buy it on Kickstarter, you get it for $99. And we just do that once a year, or sometimes less, sometimes more, usually once a year. And then that's the only time you can buy it at that price, like nowhere near that on any other place from us. And then other games, it's like limited exclusivity content. Sometimes there's some of that too. It just really depends on the game. Like with our first game for Imperial Publishing, Red Outpost, we had a limited edition version that's only going to be available for Kickstarter. And, it had a lot of extra bonus stuff and deluxeified content and, the foil box and the limited edition cover. We try to really make that thing nice and to give the backers a good value, because it's the only way you're going to get that version is through the Kickstarter. But we still will launch a regular version to retail, and you can still buy that version if you want. But we're going to always offer it to distribution to get our friendly local game stores out there to be able to take the game and sell it, because we want to support them as well.
Another thing I've noticed across a number of your campaigns is fixed price points. So, I see this, almost like price bands on your page. So as you said, the Crokinole $100. I've seen a number of your campaigns where you're in around the $25 range or $22 range.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that important to you guys as a company to kind of hit some of these key price points in Kickstarter?
It's not so much Kickstarter's price point as the kind of game we want to sell's price point. So when we're at like Gen Con or Origins or some other convention selling, a lot of these companies have these big booths with like, they sit there and play an hour and a half at the convention table, playing a game for 90 minutes or more. And then maybe they'll sell a copy or two, or maybe they won't. But it's a lot of bandwidth tied up. And we're a smaller company. So we like to have our booth set up where we have these small, simple games. You can explain them in 2 to 3 minutes and you can play them in 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a kind of the casual board game revolution kind of theory, where if you walk by our booth, you'll see us playing whatever game that is, and you'll be like, oh, that's Get Bit. I can see how that's played just by looking over your shoulder, or whatever game we have. And so I would much rather at our booth be able to just let families come in and just see things casually and see them. But then the game sells itself too, because it's not a complicated brain buster, and it's a good intro into the world of board gaming. So a lot of other companies have good days on Gen Con. Thursday's okay, Friday's okay, Saturday's really good, and Sunday's okay. Ours is like the other way around. It gets better every day. And by the family day on Saturday and Sunday, we have like our best sales, just because all of our games are generally geared to the $20, $30 price point, kind of impulse purchase, and something that if you give me 30 seconds, I can explain the game to you and you can make a decision right there. You don't have to play the game all the way through. You get the gist of it. You grasp the kind of the experience you're going to have with the game, and then you can make a decision or not. But I swear, I think we outsell people because of that, because, we can explain a game and move on. And I'm only selling, $20 games, but I'm selling one of them a minute sometimes at some of the busier times. Whereas these other companies, they have lines around the block too, but they're selling $100 game. So I don't know.
I'm sure people are probably loading up for Christmas too, right? You buy a handful of games and away they go.
Yeah, for sure.
And you have a number of people you've published on behalf of, I guess. Can you talk a little bit about that? So I think Hobby World's one, and there's a couple different brands. So we a game, if we get a game, say like Dead Man's Draw is one of our more popular games, we have the license for that worldwide. And so we license it. Well, we produce it and sell it in the US primarily. We ship it to distributors in the UK, Australia, places like that. But we also license those games to other countries. Like it's made in China and Taiwan and Japan and, Germany and Spain. But then we also get like games. We're always on the lookout for games from other countries to license to the US. So like you said, Hobby World doesn't have a presence in the US. So they're trying to license their games to the US. And of course, they've had a great success with a lot of their games, but we've done well with some of theirs. And then there's another one called Lifestyle, is another one out of Russia that we just seem to do a lot with. For whatever reason, the Russian games seem to resonate with us. I don't know why, but it just comes down to what games we see that we like, that people are willing to license at a reasonable fee. So now, do you guys take it in case we're bringing a game from another country? Is there often a lot of translation and things need to be done, or does it come pretty much ready to go?
It totally depends on the game, but generally they've already done a good translation to pitch the game to English-speaking countries. And most games, when they come out, if they're in Russia, if they think there's international appeal, they'll go ahead and translate it into English. And even when they bring the game to, say, pitch to us at Essen, they'll already have an English version. And then all we have to do really is take those art files and add our UPC and our logo and just do a quick run through of the rulebook to make sure there's nothing, totally strange or out there about it to translate it into English. But we sometimes have to localize it too. There was a game that we did out of Japan a couple of years ago. It's called Rooster Rush by Stefan Bauza.
Yeah,
very popular designer. But the name of the game was called Gaijin Dash, and it was all about foreigners in China and Japan not looking left instead of right and getting run over by cars. Totally fine for Japan and their non-politically correct environment, but the game is really fun, but it didn't work very well for our market. I'm like, I'm not going to have a game like, so we changed it to called Rooster Rush, and it's kind of like, why did the chicken cross the road? And the chickens are getting hit by traffic. It's not quite as brutal as tourists getting hit by cars. So we had to localize that and change the theme a bit. So we just take a look at whatever game it is, and usually we'll just keep it as it is. But if we need to, we'll make changes too.
And I was always curious. So when you get these art files, do you send them to do you have your manufacturing plants printed, or do you use the manufacturing plant of that did the original game?
If you're licensing a game, you're really at the mercy of what the licensor, the person who's licensing it to you, wants. So some of them are like, well, look, we want you to produce it with our factory. We're going to control the files. You tell us what to change. We'll change it. We're not even going to give you the art files. We don't want no chance of you stealing our game or printing it on the side, or I don't know, whatever. So some of them will do that, and some will just be like, we don't care. We just want our licensing fee. You can print it with us, and here's the price, or you can take it to your own factory if you want. It just depends. But generally, we just stick with theirs unless there's a compelling reason not to, like if our price is much cheaper than theirs.
Do you usually get it quoted out just to do that comparison to say?
Yeah. And a lot of times I've actually had a lot of licenses. I won't name companies, but I've had them where they give me a quote And I actually lived in China for 6 years, and I speak Mandarin. My wife's Chinese, and I deal directly with factories all the time. So I can look at a game and get pretty close to what I think it ought to be. And I quite often will go to the factory and see what it would cost me, and then be like, okay, well, that means if I can produce it for $5 and they're charging me 8, that means I'm paying like a 60% margin in there just to pay them a licensing fee. And a lot of
padding
times too,
their licensing fee,
yeah.
basically.
And
Right?
so I'm like, look, I'd rather just print it at my company, pay you the $3. If you're gonna bleed me for this, I don't know what you're charging in your factory, but my factory can do it for 5. So take it or leave it. But I would rather print with my factory and have some more autonomy on it. But what's funny too is a lot of times I ask them where they're printing it, and they'll tell me, I know most of the factories over there.
Yeah.
So I'll call the factory owner up and go, hey, how much is this game costing you? And they're like, oh, we're charging them $4.25. I'm like, holy cow. And then they're telling me, oh, the manufacturing cost is $6. I can't call them out on the lie, but it gives me some negotiating power to know what's up. Because I know most of the factories over there. I've lived really close to a lot of the more popular ones. I've worked with most of them over the years. So
had you published games before you went over there
no,
and learned
I
Mandarin?
moved over there in 2011.
Okay.
I sold my house and cars and moved over with my wife and kids, and lived from 2011 to 2017 in Suzhou, China, just west of Shanghai, where there's a lot of game publishers. So Watts Games, Magic Craft, Mayday Publishing, Long Pack, they're all over there in Shanghai area. Magic Craft just moved.
Was there surprises to you when you started kind of digging into the actual cost of some of this stuff? Was it like, whoa, it
was shocking to me how much third-party markup companies are charging people to do their games for them. I won't name any company names, but
yeah,
there's a lot of them where they're taking the factory price from the factory, marking it up 25% and passing it on to their customer, not even changing the quote except for the numbers. And they're just going back and forth as a go-between. And that's what I hate seeing, is that kind of thing. So, but it was crazy how much I could save. When I first went over there, my price on Dead Man's Draw from the time I went over there until now has dropped by 50% off the direct manufacturing costs from what I was paying to what I'm paying now. And I know lots of companies who've done that, switching over to other factories directly instead of third-party resellers.
And most of these factories as well will go and broker the different components for the game as well, right? So they'll talk to the guy who's like one street over, whose factory maybe makes plastic miniatures. And so they can say, okay, hey, I need this price, and they'll negotiate together to kind of, barter back and forth based on components and so forth as well, right?
Sure, yeah. So like one of my main factories, we were doing wooden components, and I went right to this place in China that does all the wooden toys for all of China. It's not like the US where everything's spread out. For some reason, all the competitors congregate in the same area. I guess they figure all their buyers are coming, they're going to shop around. But I went there and negotiated what I thought was a good price. And then I asked my game manufacturing company, hey, how much to do these tokens? And he was like 30% cheaper going to the same factory. I'm like, how did you do that? And he's like, you got to understand, I'm bringing the volume of all my games with me. The buying power I have versus what you have is way different. So even adding a third party in the middle, it's still cheaper for me to buy my little wooden component accessories from a factory that makes games and bundle it with his tokens rather than go directly to the factory that's still going to be making my tokens just at a cheaper price to him than to me.
Yeah. So, I always tell people they come and ask, hey, who should I, who do you use for your manufacturing? And I say, well, it always changes because I don't lock into one company.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to quote this out to 3 or 4 different, they're all going to be based out of China, but I'm going to quote out to 4 different companies, and then I'm going to let them bid against each other, and I'm going to get the best price. But if I just stick with one, well, they might give you a good price on one game, but the next game you might not get the good price, right? So it's 100%. Important to make sure you're always, quoting out. And,
I always quote 3 or 4, and there's usually ends up being 1 or 2. But I honestly think some of the problem is that companies don't know how to quote. Like Dead Man's Draw, I'm convinced that they were selling it to me for 3 years below their cost.
Yeah.
They finally came back and go, oh, we're charging too little for this game. I'm like, yeah, don't I know it? But then sometimes they charge way too much. Like the recent game I got is going to cost me $4.80 a unit. Well, one factory was charging $7 a unit. One was charging $11 a unit.
Yeah.
And then the one I went with is $4.80. It's the same exact game, just different ways of pricing, I guess. So I always get different. And usually you can kind of tell, but man, you never know until you get the quote. You never know what's going to come in.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the next on the deck? So after kind of Poetry Slam you're obviously probably going to sell out all these available pledges. Mm-hmm. Do you guys have another game coming, or what's kind of next on deck for you guys?
We have 3 more projects we're working on tentatively. One we haven't quite signed the agreement. We're going to sign it this week with Lifestyle Games for another game from them.
Yeah.
With Imperial Publishing, another game we did with them. Red Outpost did really well for us on Kickstarter. I think it did $175,000 or something. Yeah. So it did really well. We have another game from them that we really, really like and we're excited about. So we're going to launch that here probably in the next month or so. And as soon as we get the contract signed, and then we have we'll do another Crokinole Kickstarter for Mayday here coming up pretty soon. And then we're also tentatively planning a 10-year anniversary Dead Man's Draw limited edition 10 version, which we haven't. We want to kind of celebrate that game coming up on 10 years here that we've had. So it's one of our evergreens that continues to sell well. But we have a couple other projects in the works too. So
never a dull moment, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how you even had time to kind of set aside for this podcast. I mean, you guys got a lot going on.
Yeah, it's been really crazy. It's a crazy year for us. One interesting little caveat I'll tell you about is when the pandemic hit, a lot of our distributors in the US shut down. And so our sales, they just stopped paying their invoices from one day to the next. So, but then all the stores that they were selling to also stopped selling because they were all shut down too. So for like 3 months, there was nobody buying anything of us through distribution.
Yeah.
So we started selling more actively on our website and on Amazon. And then suddenly our sales actually took off. Well, instead of selling at 60% off retail to distributors, we're selling at close to 100% to direct to customers. So our margins went up. So like last year was our best year ever. It was crazy. The crokinole, the $350,000 crokinole didn't hurt for sure. But the whole thing was crazy because in the middle of the pandemic, I think people just liked playing games. They were more at home with their family, looking for creative things to do inside. And so for us, it was our best year by a lot. So it was really crazy.
Yeah, it's certainly been a big shift in the industry, and it'll be interesting to see kind of where it shakes out even a year from now, once everybody's vaccinated and we start getting back to some semblance of normalcy. I think that this is probably going to change the industry permanently. And it's always interesting to see disruptors like this, how it does impact certain industries. And this one clearly hasn't dampened people's interest in playing games.
No.
It's just, new paths on actually getting the games to those end users, which is kind of
but publishers have to adapt to how those people want to buy their games, or else they're going to die too. So
yeah, absolutely. Seth, it has been awesome having you on the podcast. I appreciate your time. All the best on Poetry Slam. I know it's going to go really well for you guys. I look forward to seeing your next campaigns.
Okay. Well, thank you a lot so much for having me on here. It's always good to hear from you guys. Thank you.
Take care. Cheers.
Yep.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply join the Facebook group Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.